Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Operational Excellence Through Process-Led Digital Transformation. I'm Candace Collins with SAP Signavio, and I'll be your moderator today. As we go to the next slide, you'll see that Dr. Matthias Kirchmer is with us. He's the Managing Director and Co-CEO of BPMD. He's an affiliated faculty program for organizational dynamics at the University of Pennsylvania. He's an experienced practitioner and thought leader in the field of digital transformation and business process management, as well as digital transformation. He co-founded BPMD, a consulting firm focused on value-driven process management and process-led digital transformation, enabling operational excellence and superior customer experience. Previously, he was managing director and global lead of BPM at Accenture and CEO of the Americas and Japan of IDS Shear. JP Asensi works as an ecosystem evangelist for SAP Signavio. In his role, he develops integrated solutions by following the 1 + 1 = 3 approach. As the principal solution architect, JP strives to connect the dots between technology and methodology to deliver actionable and sustainable solutions. So a couple of logistics. You'll see a question box at the bottom of your screen, and you can enter questions there as we go. We'll answer as many questions as time permits at the close of our formal session. We'll get back with you after the session should we run out of time to answer all of them. You'll receive a recording of this webinar within a few days. And once you end your session, you'll receive a short survey, and we'd very much appreciate you taking a minute or two to complete that, as your feedback helps us to continually improve our webcasts for you. I'll now pass this over to our first speaker. Matthias, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Candice, and hello, everybody. So I structured the discussion or the presentation into 3 parts. We'll first talk a bit about process management itself and how it fits into digital transformation. Then share some case experience based on work we did with a leading technology company in a second part. Guide you basically through that process-led digital transformation at a little pilot example, and then comment last not least on how that opportunity of that process-led transformation was used to build up a process management discipline. And then GP will bring things to life, showing you a bit how that really worked in the Signavio tool that we used basically through all the initiatives. A major industry analyst firm came to the conclusion that basically all companies who realize the full business potential of digital transformation have a formal process management capability in place. And that's not really a surprise, because if you think about putting new digital technologies into a company to bring together products and people and integrate them based on the internet, all those digital toys only bring value if they lead to new and enhanced business processes. So to be able to manage and handle those processes is key to get really value out of such digital transformations. And that's why I can say I've been in that whole process space for now over 30 years, but I basically have never seen a traction of that topic like in the last 3, 4, 5 years when companies recognize, oh, we need that to drive our digital transformation forward. And if you then have that process management discipline in place, that delivers the transparency that is required to meet a whole set of goals that companies nowadays need to combine. And it helps to mitigate the trade-offs between those values that you achieve, like quality and efficiency. Example, in the call center operations, there are steps that are really important for the client, and the client is ready to pay money for that. But then there's also a whole set of steps that are necessary for administrative purposes, However, we need to keep them as efficient as possible because the client doesn't really care about them. And process management then allows you to see where to optimize based on quality, where to optimize based on efficiency, and at the end you have a process that delivers both. And then is, of course, the question, well, sounds all good and right, but how do we now bring such process management discipline to life? And then we can take a step back and basically think about how do we establish any other management discipline? How do we establish, for example, human resources? Well, human resources is put in place through appropriate processes, through a hiring process and payroll process and so on. The discipline of process management is established through the process of process management. And we see here this depiction of such a process of process management, and it shows also how you use here digital tools as accelerators that shorten the time to value of that process of process management. And of course, the journey starts at the very top when we have our enterprise goals, and we want to, of course, focus our transformation on what matters most for those goals. So in many cases, we then take a step back and do prioritization to figure out where we best start, and that can be done through a process impact assessment. And interestingly enough, an organization only competes through about 15 to 20% of their processes, 15 to 20%. And those high impact processes are, of course, most interesting for our digital transformation. And those among the high impact processes that have a low maturity level, these are the ones that are really great starting points. All the other 80+% commodity processes may also need to go through such a transformation, but you would handle them differently. You would basically apply common practices and not waste any sophisticated innovation and optimization initiatives to that. So you start with the prioritization. And once you know where you start with your process transformation journey, it's key to take again a step back and look at the process from an outside in point of view. So basically using techniques like stakeholder journey mapping, best known, of course, for the customer journey mapping, but you can also look at your processes from a supplier point of view, from an employee point of view, and then you can add to your goals the necessary improvement of the experience of your stakeholders, which becomes more and more key for such a transformation. And then comes the interesting point where also the tool side comes into the game. Then it's very key that those journey maps and priorities can be operationalized and transferred into action. And that happens through the integration of everything in a well-working process repository like for example, the Signavio Process Manager. And here you basically link those journey maps to the underlying processes so that you know which ones to touch. And then you start your design of those processes. You analyze what we do today, you design how we want to do that in the future, compare scenarios through a simulation so that you have a clear picture. How do we make our goals happen? How do we move our strategy into operational execution. And when we talk about operational excellence, that is definitively not the same in every organization, because an operation is excellent if it delivers on the goals and strategy of the specific organization. And that integrated way from the setting of priorities through the process design and then the implementation of those processes, that is very key for achieving operational excellence. And that could mean that we put in place completely new processes. So we achieve a process innovation, or we optimize our high impact processes, or we standardize and harmonize, especially important for our commodity areas, that we don't want to invent new in every business units, but also high impact processes needs in many cases at least to be harmonized, so that we don't reinvent the wheel in every region or in every product unit. And a good process design provides all the information that you need to make your digital transformation happen. That means it provides the organizational information, addressing here people and the overall process flow, but also the necessary integration and configuration of your software. And then of course, we expect that our new and transformed processes deliver the value that we target, so deliver on our goals and our business case. But that, of course, is not a situation that now you go live with your new process and the next day everything is better. It's necessary to manage that value realization and to keep those processes on track over time. And that's the point when it gets more and more important to get some feedback and do a regular performance analysis. Do we reach our goal? Conformance analysis. Do we follow our design, or do we deviate from that? And if yes, what are the reasons? Do we need to adjust the design, or do we need to train people so that they really can follow those to-be processes? And all that is perfectly supported through process mining and analytics tool. And if we have then a good process and data governance organization in place, that organization uses the structural top-down information that is basically packaged in our repository, and the information about the specific process instances. So how well are we doing compared to our design? And then uses that information on one hand to trigger ongoing improvement activities, so smaller incremental improvements, or it sees, okay, things have changed more significantly. We need to start off with another transformation, and that means we go again through our whole life cycle. So that's basically on a very high level how such a process of process management works. But now let's make that a bit more tangible and go through an example that is based on work we have done at a major technology company. And of course, if you want to prioritize and structure your transformation, it's necessary to have an overview. What's going on in our company? What are our core processes? What are our supporting processes? And how are those structured? And then there exist very simple, straightforward techniques like a process impact assessment that shows you which of those are the high impact processes, and maturity assessment helps you to identify the high impact, low maturity processes that are, of course, most important to get such a transformation journey started. But often that's not even a big science, but there is very clear information already available where such a pilot initiative can get started. And in our specific case, that was here in our procure to pay area, where two very key challenges popped up. On one hand, it became clearer and clearer that those processes are way too expensive. And on the other hand, we got more and more complaints from suppliers that they are not paid on time. That led already to delays, lots of administrative effort. So really something worth to look into and to adjust. So that was selected as a pilot initiative for that transformation, so that we don't start boiling the ocean, but get experiences in short time frames and see what value is delivered. And the whole initiative here took just about 2 months, a bit over 2 months, so really in a very manageable time frame. And of course, since here our supplier experience played an important role, we started off having such an outside-in look from the supplier side, and there it became very clear that that whole payment and invoicing part of our supplier journey was the most critical. So if we want to get our supplier happy and make them real partner of the organization, that's the area to focus on. Then, of course, once that is clear, there's no way around. We need to understand our processes more in detail. And there, of course, the whole application of techniques like BPMN as a modeling method is very key. And we did that in that case through remote interviews, where one person asked the questions, the other person developed while we speak that process model on the screen, so that people saw how that process really got visible. And with that, it was possible to reduce the time to get that information significantly. And there I really have to say that the fact that Signavio is so easy to use really helped to capture all that knowledge in an interactive way. And once you understand how that process works, then it's very straightforward to have a first look how we can make it better. Like if you see here activities with this blue squares, these are activities that are currently done manually, but they could be more or less automated. Activities with here the red triangles, these are activities around sending emails, keeping spreadsheets. That's really things that we shouldn't need, and we should be able to cut that out, and maybe even a whole administrative role should not be necessary anymore. So we get, based on a structured as-is analysis, already a very good idea where the journey could go. And there it's also key to really involve the different stakeholders, and using tools like the collaboration hub, very, very key, so that people see, okay, that's now our as-is process. They can comment on it. They can comment on improvement opportunities. Very, very powerful. And that collaboration is, of course, even more important when we then move towards the to-be. And there in our specific initiative, we took again a step back and said, okay, we don't now start with the specific to-be of that business unit that we started with. But let's look at our IT infrastructure, and we are working here with SAP, and let's see how in an ideal situation you would use your software, your technology enabled in that specific business area, and develop something we like to refer to as a process reference model. So say, okay, that's how we want to work, and in that specific situation, we call that a global design model that was used then as the starting point for the design in the specific business units, so that we created from the beginning on a certain standardization and harmonization, because in that reference model we also indicated where are areas that we really want to keep the same everywhere and people need special approvals to deviate, and where are areas that are very region or product unit specific that can be adjusted and go through a simpler change management process. And like that, you manage during the design, the harmonization and standardization of your processes. But when you do that, then of course you have to come up with different scenarios, or you want to know, okay, if we move towards that to-be situation, do I really meet my business case? Do I really make the progress I want? And that's a point where that whole topic around process simulation comes in the game. And I must say I've always been a bit skeptical about that, because it can take a lot of time and effort, and you can make a whole science out of that. But if you do that in a pragmatic way, you estimate your cost, time attributes, you estimate your percentages, you get the values in interviews, and you come very quickly to a situation that you have a good idea how the process would develop. And we could show here in an example in one of the sub-processes that we can reduce cost by almost 50%, that we can increase scalability by a factor 9. And with that, we got very valid information for our business case to either confirm or update it, and have then a clear direction how we will create value and how we will use those as is and to-be models in our realization. So to drive the system configuration, but also to drive the people change management. And at this point, I'm often asked, well, do we really need those as-is processes? Why not just move towards the to-be and then just throw the old stuff away? But when it comes here to change management, it can be very, very important to get a good feeling how big that change will be for the different people, so that we can adjust and focus the change management activities accordingly. And if you have then those to-be and as-is designs in your repository tool, we created in that case a list of activities that will go away, lists of activities that will come in addition, because that's what happens in most of the cases. You will also have to do something you don't do today. And it will show where changes are, so that you have a very good information for your change management, and can drive that also based on your processes. And at the end, you are then set on the technology side as well as on the people side to go live with your new process. And that's then the point where you want to know, well, do we really follow our design? Do we achieve our goals? And in that situation, the power of such a process mining approach really is extremely helpful. And there I must say, what I like at the Signavio mining is that you get the information in the context of your process, so that it's easier to really come up with actionable insights. And then you see, well, do we follow our to be design, or where are differences? And you can figure out why people do something else, and address that accordingly. And of course, you check the performance and see if we reach our goal. And in that specific pilot initiative, their finance department audited that process in the pilot project, and already after 6 months, they confirmed that over $8 million of yearly savings were achieved over time, that even grew to $11 million. The on-time payments got significantly improved. So a big step forward in here our towards our business goals and our strategy execution, and with that a next level of operational excellence. And while doing all of that, we basically kept on working together, thinking of on how do we keep that process on track, and how do we then transfer that successful approach towards other processes, and basically keep that transformation and process management journey going. And we defined then a process and data governance approach, the appropriate roles, the governance processes, all that, the necessary infrastructure, how it's used, the interaction with the business units. So put in place basically the company-specific process of process management. And to make sure that we can really work in that process of process management and sustain those achievements, it has proven to be very useful to basically document key components of that BPM discipline in a what we like to refer to as a BPM playbook that has here very operational content, like here the definition of the subset of the BPM symbols that we use for our process modeling. You may have read that this modeling method has over 250 different symbols, and if you try to use all of them, then you may confuse many of your users. So to select the 5–10% that you want to use and how you want to use it, very important. Defining the right level of detail and how to structure that in the organization, so that when you have different transformation initiatives going on, that the results of your designs fit together. and so on. So the very operational things documented, but also the more structural things. How does our governance work? How do we align data and process governance? All those topics. So really, really recommended to have such a process management playbook in place and make that a living document that with every initiative, with every new technique and approach you use, you grow that handbook, and with that make it accessible for the organization. And that's the reason why the recommendation is clear. Instead of just doing a first initiative focusing on achieving the appropriate improvements, combine that with the building, improving or set up of your process management discipline, so that at the end of a successful first process-led transformation initiative, you have achieved both. You have made a direct impact on the organization by helping moving towards the previously defined through a next level of operational excellence in that pilot area, and while doing that, creating a sustainable process management capability that you keep on leveraging in the future. And with that, I think we are ready to get even more hands-on, and I would like to hand over to GP to guide us a bit through how all that looks like in the real tool environment in Signavio.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Matthias, for the presentation. I hope you can see my screen. I guess so, right? So thanks a lot for the presentation. I like the concept of the process of process management. So I will take you through a live demonstration. Before doing so, my promise to you is only 2 slides, and then we're gonna actually transition to the live demonstration. So for those who are not aware or not don't know actually SAP Signavio, so we do have 3 main pillars, right? Business process management, process mining, and journey modeling. We have these 3 pillars as an integrated platform, and the idea is really we strive to shorten the time to insight, shorten the time to adapt. That can mean, you know, very tactical transformation or very enterprise-wide transformation. So another way to represent that, and that's gonna fit perfectly with what Matthias just told you, is we are handling the transformation as an holistic approach, right? And we like to connect the dots between the why, which usually comes out of the strategic planning exercise, where the big guys are deciding about the big investment streams, right? And the big business drivers that usually trigger some transformation initiatives. So that's the how. And don't forget, we've been 12 years of experience in business process management. So it means that we live and breathe process repository. So, and this single source of truth will help us to connect the dots from the value drivers, the capabilities, the process, the data, the system, the people, and so on. The beauty of it, it is something which is fully holistic. So it means you can trigger that top down, bottom up, inside out, or outside in. And just to show you that for real, with Matthias, we decided to actually take you through one very specific example. So just before going there, just wanted to make a point. So because we do, you know, business process intelligence, we are by nature and by default agnostic in terms of use case, but also agnostic in terms of technology. And I'm going to touch this point in a minute or so, right? So here, in order to fit perfectly with the story that Matthias told you, the process of process management and being able to connect the dot between the different layers, we decided to walk you through an example which is called issue to resolution. Because it's quite natural to understand issue to resolution, we're going to have different angles. We're going to have the inside out, in other words, how we handle this process internally, right? What is our secret sauce actually to fix an issue? But you also have the other dimension, which is more the outside in, meaning what are the different touch points and experience of our end customers, right? So we're going to touch these 2 dimensions during the demonstrations. So let's start with the why. I don't know if you remember, I had the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid, we were speaking about the why. So what is great with the SAP Signavio platform is that we speak different languages. What I mean by that is sometimes you need to capture a very high-level representation to speak with stakeholders, business leaders. Sometimes you need to speak with technical people. So you're going to see during this demonstration that we can adapt our language depending on the audience we are addressing. So the very first thing we like to do is to capture the scope and objectives with this fancy diagram that looks like a PowerPoint, to be honest, where you are positioning who are the personas, what are the key challenges, and obviously the most important, what are the key drivers, what we call at SAP the value drivers. In this specific case, I remind you, it is issue to resolution, so we can easily understand that what we want is we want by any means to reduce the churn rate. We also want to improve the customer experience. So beyond capturing these different dimensions on this very fancy map, any of these objects are objects. So what I mean by that is when you click on it, they are stored into one central repository. And within this repository that we call a dictionary, you can capture the description of this object, the relationship with the project, the lines of business, and the KPIs. So what I'm touching here is really the first step of the end-to-end traceability, which is connecting the dot between the why, the how, and the what. So in this specific case, for this demonstration, we're going to speak about issue to resolution. The main stakeholder is the Chief Customer Officer, and we've got two main value drivers. The first one is reduce the churn rate. So we need to remove the friction by any means from our customers' experience, but also we want to provide them nothing but the best experience, you know, because we all have faced this situation where we've got an issue, right? And obviously we want to fix it as soon as possible. So that's the context. And as you can see, we have captured this context and the value drivers directly within the platform. Now we need to drill down into the meat of the demonstration, right? What we try to fix. So as I told you at the beginning, SAP Signavio speaks various languages. And the first language we want to speak here with you is the journey modeling. Journey modeling is meant to support the outside-in type of approach. It means that let's put our feet into the shoes of our customers. They're going to have different stages, different touch points, and we need to make sure we understand what type of experience we are delivering to them, right? So with the journey model, we can capture the sentiments, the touch points, right? Also some customer journey maps that Matthias was referring to before. But even beyond the experience, we can also map the touch points with operational data, meaning the metrics and KPIs that are measured at the process level. So we can go across these different layers from the why, right? The experience, the touch point, and the underlying processes within one single view. That's exactly the objective of the journey model. And as soon as we have identified, for instance, some points where we've got frictions, right? So touch points with our customers where they are facing some big delays or hiccups, etc., we can now click on the journey, right, on the customer journey model, right? And then we can drill down directly to another language, which is here called customer journey map, where we can have a visual representation of, you know, the flow, the steps of my customer, right? That's another language, right? It's not technical. It's more the type of language we're going to speak with people that own responsibilities into the customer journey, right? Or employee journey or partner journey. And for each of these touch points, you can click on it and get access to the underlying information. So here we've got the confirmation that at this specific point, right, when we report the issue, we wait for a solution, right? Nobody wants to wait, right? We've got a lot of friction and the net promoter score is quite low, right? So now guess what? What we need to do is we need to connect the dot between this outside-in type of approach to the friction point, which is actually handled by a process or a system. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to drill down into the process. And before moving, you know, into the next step of the demonstration, I just want to make a small pause here, right? Because so far I'm showing you some pre-established or pre-built content, and I want to make the point because Matthias mentioned it, SAP Signavio is very easy to use. So in order to capture this content as part of the platform, you've got various ways of doing it. First, if you already have some visual documents, or if you have some BPMN diagram that has been developed with another competitive solution. As long as they are using standard notation, we can import them into our platform. But we've got also other ways to capture this information. I'm going to start with the one which is the preferred way by our partners, and you're going to get my point, is, you know, when we are driving workshops and we have no time to waste, you can use Quick Model. Quick Model is actually meant to help you to capture information, to capture a process without having to model it, right? So it's like an Excel-based type of capture. So here we say issue resolved, and you just have to type here the different step of your process, who is doing that, right? And automatically, as you can see, there is no smoke and mirror. This is actually building the diagram in front of you automatically, right? So let's say here I've got another department in charge, and you will see that bit by bit, my BPMN diagram is going to be built. Fantastic when you are driving a workshop because you have no time to drag and drop, and you can even add information such as a system, or I don't know, the tickets document, right? That's going to build this additional layer as part of the BPMN diagram. For those who are interested, you know, SAP Signavio is also highly customizable. So what I mean by that is if you want to build your own meta model, in other words, your own way to depict your reality, you don't need to code anything. You just need to be administrator, and you can add the attributes and the relationships that you deem necessary. And as long as they are part of the repository and the meta model, you can activate this attribute as part of the quick model or the process manager. A very good way to not only build from scratch a new diagram, but also to update the diagram. Can you imagine if you are not a process expert or a process manager, process modeling expert, you may want to update this information by opening this console and just putting the description, for instance. So you don't need to be an expert to do that. Okay, so that was quick model, a very nice way to capture very quickly information. The other way is obviously by using SAP Signavio Process Manager, which is our process modeling environment, where you've got your diagram and you can just simply drag and drop to create your object, right? Click on the object and put some attributes, including the custom attributes I was referring to before, right? Totally adaptable, and everything is done to make your life easier to capture, but also to update the information. Okay, so let's come back to our context. So now we've got our issue management process that has been captured in BPMN diagram. Beyond the flow, you can also activate some visualization. So let's say, for instance, I want to remove the noise of the system. I want to keep it very straight to the basic, right? So I can activate a view, which is called compact, which is makes the system disappearing, right? I also have other options such as, you know what, amongst these different steps, I may have some good candidate for automation, or I may have some tasks that are priority. So I can decide what I want to showcase. And something which is quite unique on the market, as you may know, is SAP Signavio is bringing together business process management, process mining, and journey modeling. So what I mean by that is alongside your documentation, alongside what you think your process is all about, you can map this information with process mining. And I don't know if you remember, but Matthias was touching this point, using process mining to control the compliance, to actually confront what you think your process is all about versus what is the reality. So we had one question before, so I just want to touch this very quickly, even if it's not a process mining centric demonstration. So here, the information that you have on this slide is actually the process discovery. So what we've done, we have used our out-of-the-box connectors or ETL to connect with the source systems, right? And based on the event logs that can come from one or multiple systems and SAP and non-SAP systems, we now streamline the information to show you exactly how your process is getting executed in reality, right? And that is showing you that you've got a lot of loops, rework, hiccups, which is explaining you the long cycle time, but also the fact that you've got a lot of rework. So to make it short, it's broken, right? And now we can easily understand why this process is bringing friction on the experience side of the game, okay? So that's process mining, which is attached to your process documentation. And that leads you to create this type of juxtaposition. You can now put the BPMN diagram and the process mining insight that will help you to understand where you've got loops, rework, friction, and so on. Usually, this type of analysis, which is mixing the process knowledge, the process tribal knowledge I was about to say, and the scientific approach coming from process mining, that will help you to actually compare the way you are doing your issue to resolution process with any type of best practices that you may have, right? And this type of best practices that you see on the right-hand side, that can come from SAP, from BPMD, from you, that can be a blend of best practices that will help you to understand this is your current state, right? And on the right-hand side, we see that if you add some additional task that may help you to alleviate the friction, right? So for instance, we may want to put in place a remote function to check the device, right? And to actually be much more proactive in the way to control the issue. But also, before we send someone on the field to fix the issue, we may want to apply a qualification form. All this will help us actually to shape my future, right? And Matthias touched this point, which is one of the, the most important one is, it's great to have a target state, but now we need to do some stress tests. What I mean by that is you can fully leverage the process simulation engine, which is embedded into SAP Signavio process transformation suite, to shape your future state, right? With the different new tasks that we have added, and why not the use of an attended bot, right, for this specific step, and build as many scenarios as you want, right? What if I do engage with automation? What if I don't? And you can run as many simulations as you want, and to see for each of them what's going to be the outcome in terms of cost, resource consumption, cycle time, and so on. Anything you simulate can be exported into an Excel spreadsheet, and that will help you to bring the foundation of your business case. And you've seen at no point I went out of the solution. I stayed into the same end-to-end business transformation platform, right? So let's assume now we feel good about the target state because the different simulation scenarios that we ran were actually quite positive. Now we need to engage with one of the most important things of a transformation, right? Is we need to put people at the center. So here what we do is that we fully leverage SAP Signavio Collaboration Hub, which is a one-stop shop where you consume content, but you can also collaborate. So let me show you how. So here you are into a preview mode. So let's say I have communicated this target state to some of my subject matter experts, right? Maybe an enterprise architect, a process owner, and my manager. And these people can certainly consume the content here by clicking on the content, get access to the ID card of the subject. But more than that, they can also have a voice, and they can start a back and forth to ask their question, to challenge us, right? So that will help us to do two things. The first one is to de-risk the transformation because we move from reactive to much more proactivity. And the second point is also to get their buy-in, because we all know that even if it's a small change or a small transformation, we need to make sure we bring our people on board. And we need to make sure that they feel they are part of this adventure, right? That's exactly what SAP Signavio Collaboration Hub is all about, is bringing people at the center of the transformation, allowing them to consume the content, but also contribute to this content. So fast forward, let's say now we've got the stamp and the validation. We move forward with the implementation of this new issue to resolution process. And it is not the point of the demonstration today, but just to let you know, we've got a bunch of governance capabilities that will help you to validate the content, compare, look at the different comments, and you always keep, let's say, an audit trail of what has been done by who, right? And as soon as it is implemented, we enter into, the last point, which is extremely important, is we need to come back to the original status. You say, okay, now we've got a new process. What is the impact on the process, but also on the experience? And that's where exactly we can call back journey model, because we are speaking about a process which is fairly customer facing, right? And we can see that now my new process actually improved the situation because the NPS, or the feeling of my customer, has increased, right? The customer journey map has not really changed per se, right? But if I zoom on it, and I look at exactly the same touch point that we had here, right? Now the situation has changed. Why? Because the underlying process is new, right? And because this new process is more performance, we are removing friction, we are faster, right? At the end of the day, my customer is going to have a better feeling about the way we serve and the way we solve the issue, right? So that's the idea of this full cycle where the transformation of and the deliverable, which is a new version of my process, is just the beginning of the story. Because now we've got the process of process management on. The idea is to make sure that we can keep an eye, we can keep the monitoring on the process. Because all the effort that we have put in place to improve the situation, we want to capitalize on it and keep an eye and make sure we've got the right indicator to see, okay, now I want to make sure that we stay below one certain threshold to be much more proactive in the way we serve our end customers. That's exactly all the point. By bringing all the different capabilities from process modeling, process simulation, process mining, journey modeling, governance, all of these capabilities together to make sure we have a full end-to-end business transformation platform. It can be used for one specific transformation, but also for the continuous improvements. So that was pretty much what I wanted to cover during this live demonstration, right? The idea being that now I will let actually Matthias, stepping in. I think we've got enough time for the key takeaways and to take some questions if we have. Okay. Matthias, are you around for the last slide?
Oh, sorry, I was on
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, GP, and I think that really brought things to life. And what we have seen now during the last 45 minutes is that really processes realize the value of digitalization. So it's very important that we have a good handle around them. When you improve those processes, it's important to understand the context, to prioritize, and to really select where to start the transformation so that you don't run into the trap and boil the ocean. When you transform, it's important to do that value-driven, linked to your goals. And that's often a challenge in those process management initiatives when everybody's so excited about the tools and techniques that the outcomes and values are not stressed enough. So it needs to be value driven. We need to take our decisions database, get the data through simulations, through analysis of our as-is processes, so that we really move in the right way. And to make all of that happen in an efficient, especially time-efficient way, we need to do that transformation tool-enabled, as GP has nicely demonstrated that. To sustain the value we achieve and to keep the journey going, it's important to put in place the right process governance approach in more and more situations, combined with the appropriate data governance, so that we really keep the journey going. And in order to make that happen, we establish process management as a real management discipline. With that, we still have, I think, 10 minutes left for some questions.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much to both of you. Thanks for sharing your expertise on this topic, Matthias, and for bringing it to life with your demo, JP. So we do have a few questions. Some are in the chat, some are in Q&A. So let me just read off the first one. I think you both covered this, but one of the questions is, where should I start with digital transformation and an OpEx initiative?
Yeah, I briefly hinted to that. If you are at the very beginning of the journey, it's normally the best to do a systematic but pragmatic and fast process impact assessment, to identify what are my high impact processes that are most important for my organization in the context of the current strategy. And that is something that can be done in a very straightforward way, like in a matrix format, where you see on one side your level 3 processes, on the top your key value drivers, so that represent your strategy, and then you identify for each process what is the impact on each value driver, and like that identify your high impact processes. And to do that really brings the thinking on in a situation that we start where it's really most important for the company. I saw so many examples where then the transformation journey was started with the payroll process, or the procurement of office material in areas where people had a bit of budget left and had a bit more time, and then you spend a lot of time and effort. If it goes well, nobody really cares because the areas are not really important for the company, and if it goes wrong, then in any case you have an issue. So to think carefully, where are your high impact, low maturity processes, and then take out either an entire process or a sub process in this area makes most sense.
I think that's a really insightful. That's great, Matthias. Thank you. I think we probably have time for one more, and I really like this question. It's a great one. When do you know you're finished?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and a very short answer. Never. And it's very simple that things change all the time. All the time there are new customer requirements, there are new technology developments, there are new legal requirements, and. So that means you need to adjust all the time. So the journey never ends. It's just a question, can you adjust in small incremental steps, so in a more ongoing improvement mode, or do you need to launch a new larger improvement initiative? And to help with that decision, that is a key task of a good process governance organization that basically watches that business environment, and then comes up with the recommendations, which way to go, and triggers the appropriate actions.
Very insightful again.
I appreciate anything to add?
No, I think you nailed it, right? The process of process management is by default a never-ending story, and that's the beauty of our discipline. We need to make sure that sometimes there is a peak and we need to rush, etc., but at no point we stay, right? And we stop. We need to keep it rolling. That's the most important thing.
And I like that you mentioned that process of process management at this point, because the fact that the journey never ends, that is exactly what makes it important to have that process management as a process of itself in place. It's not like 20 years or 30 years ago when you did one project and then you were done. In that time, all these process tools and techniques were used mainly on a project basis. Nowadays, we need such a process of process management, and the underlying tools enable it, like I like to call it the ERP system for the process of process management. And that is something you use in an ongoing basis to manage that journey as we have discussed it.
And what if I use that as a teaser for our next webinar, Matthias, right? To use actually the platform that I did showcase very briefly, but to actually, everything you said before, we implement that within SAP Signavio, and being able to go through the different steps and to show within the tool how we can support that as a capability that you activate, whatever the type of use case, whatever the type of system, but this DNA, I would say, it's part of the DNA of analyzing current state. What are the different options that we have to build the target state, right? Use the tool as a vehicle for the change, and also keep going monitoring. That's maybe a very nice next webinar for all of us. What do you think?
I think that's a very good idea, and it shows then how also the process of process management evolves over time. So already looking forward to that.
Good, perfect.
Thank you so much. And we are out of time as we get to our last slide, and apologies for not getting to all of our questions, but I promise we will get back to you with everything that you've asked, and just take a moment on the survey as you exit, and you'll receive a recording of this in the very near term. So thanks so much for all of you joining us, and thanks to our presenters.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.